Scott, a question for you about humanism, and you and August represent two organizations that are related, connected, but are doing something different. And we talked a little bit about that atheism has a non-belief notion, and you've given me a card that says humanism and its aspirations.
Exactly.
And I'm wondering, could someone who's a deist be a humanist as well?
Yes, you can be.
So why do you only partner with the atheists?
Well, we actually do work with other things, but basically, as humanists, a vast majority of us are non-believers. So we've gotten to the point it's like, okay, we're done talking to God thing. We just now need to figure out how we're going to move forward and where do we get our ethics from? How do we create societies from that? And humanism is basically saying, well, we're going to use, the principles spelled out in this cute little card. So we don't need a huge book for that. Is that, we start by saying we look at the world by observation, experimentation, and rational analysis. So what does that tell us? And how does we look at that even with human interaction? We can get, even though sometimes it's kind of hard to quantify, you can get down to where you can analyze how human beings interact with each other. We can see that through evolution that we are social beings, and that the no man is an island is a good thing, and the guy living off on his own on an island tends to go really nuts. So basically, when they talk about, or people say, well, we must follow the 10 Commandments. It's like, well, the basic rules of that, of not killing, of not stealing, and treating everybody else nicely, you'll find in any society that has more than 2 people in it that's going to exist for more than 15 minutes. Because
and that's what I wanted to ask you about.
They're the really basic things that any society needs. So we don't need to have those dictated from on high or found in a book, and let's just say these are, the basic rules. And then when it comes to the harder things, that's where we're going to have those debates and those arguments.
Might that require a longer book?
Yeah, that could require a longer book, but still it doesn't take that much more, because the other parts, the values get tested through time. So we find out which rules work over time. We find out that originally, stopping for a red light and not being able to take a turn right after a stop, well, that was okay. But as more cars came on the road, it was nice that people could sneak off it. There wasn't anybody coming from that cross street going through. So, those things get learned over time. And that's what, humanism is out to do, is to just say, we don't need the trappings of religion, of the belief in the supernatural, and that to come up with the basic rules and ways that we can operate in society.
Because they're already in human beings.
They're already in human beings, because that's how we evolved. We evolved to be social creatures that interact, and we can see that we've learned things over time. But part of we have to then use that rational part to come back, because there are things built into us that we used to survive in the African veldt that don't help us a whole lot when you're in a city with cars. There's things in there. It's like Michael Shermer talks about type 1 versus type 2 mistakes. A type 1 mistake of wandering through the thing and thinking, is it the wind or is it a tiger?
Okay, so can I ask you this?
Yeah.
Do you think, in that view, because that's everything I would say. I mean, I would amen all of that, right? As a Christian, I would say, yeah, exactly. But I would also throw in one of the things by observation of human history that we can say is that human beings have developed an understanding of a deity in almost every, if not every, I don't want to be that bold, almost every human experience has had a deity. So based on that theory of humanism that you have, that we observe at how people have lived and we declare that those are good if they're common, then why wouldn't you conclude that religious impetus, deity belief, is one of those?
Well, we can see that comes in because, young children, we've noticed as they grow up, do take authoritarian rules very seriously, because I noticed with my son bringing him up that I could get him to obey with a change in my voice tone on that. So that human beings, as we're learning, our brains learn to treat the bigger human beings as the ones that know better and the protectors. Even though sometimes they want to go off and explore, they'll do that. And that can also be attributed because most people always think of gods as being bigger themselves. And also, we've used sort of God belief to attribute those things. We talked about the first show about Carl Sagan's candle being our guidepost. Generally, the amount of knowledge we have, we can be seen in that, and attributing to odd noises off. But just sort of things. And then as we've explored more, we know, oh yeah, thunder's made by, what's going on in the clouds. The same with lightning. Those are perfectly understandable natural phenomenon. So,
does it intrigue you at all as a humanist that wants to use human experience and as the guide for that which we then can call normative, which is what I heard you saying, that it's in a human being because we know that those things in the 10 Commandments, I would suggest all of them, not just a few of them, but all 10 of them have been normative in most of human societies. They're not special, right? There's nothing special in any of them to how human beings would organize. If they never heard the 10 Commandments or the Bible, you would probably still organize around those because they're social organizing principles, which is what they were for in the Old Testament as well. But doesn't it make you say, look, religious belief is one of those? I mean, because you can't find a society anywhere other than a few examples, perhaps, where human beings didn't profess a deity. Why is that not something that you would, as a humanist, put in the category of must be necessary for human experience?
Simply because at this point we've, figured out that human beings are pattern-seeking creatures. As I was talking about, Michael Shermer talks about the type 1 and type 2 errors. If you're going through a clearing and something is stirring, is it the wind or is it a tiger? The guys who thought the tiger was the wind aren't contributing their genetics to us now because they were lunch.
Yeah.
The guys who thought the wind was a tiger and turns out it was the winds are the ones that are still around.
Yeah.
So those attributes helped us survive in that area, but we don't necessarily need them as we go forward. We don't need to attribute things to things off when we know those basic rules are relatively inbuilt into human beings.
See, there's a theory called hyperactive agency detectors. We are agency detectors. Something unknown in nature, we look for an agent behind it, like the tiger. But it becomes hyperactive when we invent a god. And now we're realizing, no, that's a misuse of something that was good for survival value, but really there's no god there.
Okay, what I want to ask you after the break in this next segment then isn't that what in science you call a hypothesis? So isn't science asking there's a hypothesis that this is the answer and I'm going to test and see if it actually is? So maybe we can try that after the break.
We actually have a little bit of time left. I would also like to note that, religion isn't just one thing. I mean, one of the things that we do that is part of, any religious tradition is the telling of story. And if we give up a god in that, we don't necessarily give up all those individual pieces.
Right.
So,
for sure.
Just by rejecting the god and determining
do you destroy it when you add one.
Not necessarily. Well, we can again.
But a lot of baggage comes with adding a god often.
Well, a lot of baggage comes with dropping one. Look, we all know it's not an easy thing to live as somebody who doesn't believe in God.
All right. Well, we'll get back to that. Please stay with us through the break. You're listening to AM 950 KTNF.